right. Everybody good? Okay, I'm going to, before we start digital rehab, I did have a question. I have so much data up here. I have 3 books worth, and then there's stuff that are not in my books, like AI, because if, it's like I was just mentioning to a new friend I just made, I go to bed smart and I wake up stupid every day. Technology changes so quickly. There's just stuff every day to learn. But there is an issue out there that I have a whole section on that I do want to touch on with you, and I'm glad this question came up, okay? For those who have children and grandchildren that you allow online, particularly Roblox, Discord, and some others, Minecraft, law enforcement, which I work with from time to time. I'm not a law enforcement person. I liaise and get hired to collaborate and do these talks. But being in the police car and being on the ground with them, I learn a lot. And but I'm there to tell them how the addiction forms in the brain, that side of it, and then they show me what's actually going on with the kids, right? So there's a big thing going on with kids right now online, talking about young kids, and this is not, what sets this cult apart in the chat rooms, on the gaming platforms, and other platforms, is that this is not the standard adult pedophile trying to get kids. These are kids getting kids. Does that make sense? So this is like Lord of the Flies. Do you know what I'm referring to, that book where kids got marooned on an island and then it disintegrated because kids were leading kids? Okay. So it's called the 764 cult, and I'll just go over this pretty quickly. Roblox users' exposure to child abuse, suicide content, horrendous, federal minister says. Now this is from Australia, where I spend a lot of time. But it's the same here in the U.S. It's the same in Africa. It's the same anywhere the internet goes. So, sprawling online platform Roblox has allegedly failed to stamp out pornographic and suicidal material despite extensive assurances given to Australia's e-safety commissioner, the federal communications minister says. Anika Wells has written to Roblox requesting an urgent meeting. I am alarmed by reports of children being exposed to graphic and gratuitous user-generated content on the platform, including sexually explicit and suicidal material. Even more disturbing are ongoing reports and concerns about children being approached and groomed by predators who actively seek to exploit their curiosity and innocence. So it is pedophiles, but it's also children going after children. So modern day terrorism, how the online, and this is American headlines here, modern day terrorism, how the online extremist network 764 is threatening teen lives. Authorities say one of the main goals of 764 and its many affiliates is to sow chaos and destroy society. It's a Marxist philosophy. Its members find vulnerable children online, elicit private information and intimate sexual images from them, and then use that sensitive material to blackmail victims into mutilating themselves or taking other violent action, all while streaming it on social media so others can watch and torment the victims too. So I'm going to show a video. This is similar to the cutting thing. If you are a bit squeamish, I would invite you to shut your eyes. Now, you can listen to this one, I think, but there's no shame if you're not medically inclined, okay? But this is pretty horrendous stuff. Have a look.
Trinity hides her scars, but can't unsee them.
I look in the mirror now and I still see that engraved in my chest. I really wish it wasn't there.
Trinity says she was forced to carve into her body by members of a violent online network of predators called 764. She says they also forced her to share sexually explicit images and even goaded her on when she attempted suicide.
I was having a mental breakdown and I lifted up my shirt and I said, look what they've done to me, look what they've done to me, I can't take this anymore.
Trinity reported her exploitation to the RCMP in Red Deer in July 2021. But she and her mother Maria didn't feel their case was being taken seriously until years later when a detective in North Carolina started looking into Trinity's case.
Hearing Trinity say, this is what he did to me, it still is hard to wrap my brain around.
For their safety, we're not using their last names.
Maybe they didn't take it serious that way because she was the one holding the knife, but it should have been taken serious.
Police say 764 and its related groups are terrorizing thousands of children around the world. Its members prowl on popular platforms and lure vulnerable minors into private groups where they push them to self-harm, hurt their pets, and kill themselves.
The most horrendous part about it is it's minors doing this to minors. And we're talking about 13-year-olds targeting 16-year-olds, 16-year-olds sextorting 11-year-olds.
Now, I want to camp out on something he said. The most horrendous part about it is minors doing this to minors. We're talking about 13-year-olds targeting 16-year-olds, 16-year-olds sextorting 11-year-olds. So you leave a child alone in a bedroom with the door shut with a device, with a prefrontal cortex that is not existent really in terms of the brakes. Now, physically there's a brain there, but the mechanism of impulse control and reasoning is not grown yet. And this is what you get. Because theologically, the sin nature is there, and even the secular folk will tell you they do evil stuff to each other. And we understand spiritually what that is. So this is not limited to this, but these are the main ones you want to look out for. And I would just say shut it all down. Minecraft, Roblox, Telegram, and Discord. And there are others. Okay? A lot of others. But these are the main ones that the kids, it's what's popular now. Next week, something else could pop up on that screen that I would have to add. So let me tell you what I think personally is terrible advice. Yes, ma'am.
So hypothetically, aren't we supposed to teach them to put on the brakes? So would limits in place teach that procedure over? Because as adults, we need to learn how to put on the brakes, right? So are there limits in place, like Minecraft not online for limited amount of time, teaching them why and how? Because then you're going to teach the brain to put on the brakes? Is that...
In other areas, but not with a screen.
Okay.
Because the screen itself has nothing to do with the content, will cause the holes to appear. They get addicted. So it's not the content, it's the medium doing it. So you don't want to use the screen as an opportunity to teach them impulse control. Now, they won't have impulse control even if you teach it to them. That is a seed that you're planting, conditioning them so as their brain develops, suddenly that kicks in and they start to have impulse control. But at that age, you can do all you want in terms of training, and you should, but he's not going to be able to do it, is what I'm saying.
I'm responsible for, this is my son, he's
Yeah,
mine.
but
so I'm responsible for his impulse control.
Right,
at
you are his
age.
brakes. So
Correct.
you just say no screens. You are his impulse control. So right now you're going to play board games, card games, you're going to go outside and play, you're going to climb trees, break bones, all that stuff. But you're not going to have a screen because it's a drug. And that's what you teach them. Now, that's controversial to some people, except to doctors and neuroscientists. What I say is perfectly normal conversation with us. But to the general public, these people are extreme. And we think adults are extreme for giving cocaine the equivalent of to their children. They think we're crazy for saying take the coke away. So we fight, but we're not going to budge, and neither are they. Now, as Christians, we should budge, shouldn't we? Yes. Okay. Amen. All right, so this is Matthew Kreiner from the Institute for Countering Digital Extremism. And his heart's right, okay? I'm not bashing the guy. I just have a comment to make on the advice that you constantly hear over and over. Have a look.
What would be your number one message for parents? Have the difficult conversations now about...
Now, I have heard for 20 years, have the difficult conversation. And it's never stopped 764. It's never stopped them from having digital addiction. That's the first line that you always hear these experts who make a lot of money, I wish I did, but have the difficult conversation. Understand that just educating children without the brakes doesn't change behavior. Okay? It's just terrible advice. Now, should you have the conversation? Of course you should. But you shouldn't expect change is what I'm trying to say. You definitely train them, but it kicks in later when the mechanism grows for it to kick in. So yes, you tell them, you have the conversation, but what he's implying here, if you have the conversation, they'll be fine. And they're not fine because they don't have the brakes to be fine.
What your child may or may not be exposed to online. It's very similar to the birds and the bees conversation. It's going to be painful. It's uncomfortable. But they need to hear it.
This is nothing like the birds and the bees. The birds and the bees are a lot more difficult conversation. This is a stupid video game. There should be no difficulty in this one at all. Birds and bees, that's a difficult one. And it should be. It's a delicate thing. It's a God thing. And then it's been polluted and all that. But this is a stupid screen. At least that's what I think. because this is what I do. And I've seen the damage in so many lives. Are you with me? So it just becomes easy for me to go, just get rid of it. And I'm not the only one who says that too. All right, so let's change gears. Everybody still on the same page? You still love me? All right, let's talk about digital rehabilitation. We'll get into this, and then, like I said, the next one, and we'll leave a little bit more time, is artificial intelligence. But at any time you want to raise your hand and ask questions during this as well, okay? Feel free. All right, so in digital rehabilitation, the whole theme here is based on what I showed you last with little Noah, the homeostasis returning. These difficult questions on how do I manage my work situation. And the whole thing here is that it's not that I'm advocating that you be miserable and you can't do anything fun. The whole thing here is the thief comes not but to steal, kill, and destroy. But Jesus says, I've come that you might have life and that you might have it more abundantly. So I showed you the video of that little child and the mother. Does it look like that child is having an abundant life to you? And her mother, and I don't hate either one of them. They both need to be redeemed, and that's the heart of God, and they can be. It's frustrating, no doubt. So when you talk about digital rehabilitation, I looked into the major clinics, the major people who do this, and asked the question, how long does it take? Okay? And this is generally the guidance that all the clinics and the people who do this medically give. If you're digitally addicted, the first thing you have to do is a full and complete detox. Meaning you have to go, like those children that I showed you, you have to go for a period of time without any tech. Now, in their case, they responded quite well in just 3 weeks. That's not, to them, it's an eternity. But for those of us who are older, we know that we can't remember where 2023 went. Is it how are we end up in 2026? You see what I'm saying? It's not a big time investment. That's the good news. So what we're saying here is, if you're addicted, using words like balance and limit will not fix your problem. This is a medical issue where the brain has to reset, and you cannot, now get this if you're taking notes, you cannot get over a drug addiction and continue taking the drug. So when you send an alcoholic to be dried out, they don't give them a beer for reward on Saturday for good behavior during the week. But that's how we treat digital, or parents treat digital addiction typically. So we're going to limit, we're going to balance. What we're saying is that has to go away. That verbiage, that have the difficult conversation, that all has to go away. Now, not the conversation, but don't expect it to detox your child is what I'm saying. Okay? So outside of pornography, which is a separate addiction, it takes 4 to 6 weeks. And you saw these children, their brain scans showed the withdrawals were completely gone in just 3 weeks. This should encourage you, brothers and sisters. No screens at all, including television. And then you have to return to technology with mitigation strategies, and life has to be very different. Now that your impulse control is back, you can lose it much more quickly than when you first got addicted. In other words, the wall can go right back up to where when you first got addicted, it went up slowly. Now it shoots back up. Once an addict, always an addict. So you tell the alcoholic, stay out of the bar. You tell the video gamer, no more video games. Ever. There's no such thing as limit, balance, a little bit of Coke is fine, none of that. And remember, it's not the content. So the reason why the schools are all taking edutainment and gamification out is because it's been a colossal failure. The grades have gone down. And I'll show you a video testimony of that a little bit later that happened, that one of the speakers that Ted Cruz brought in for the hearing was a cognitive neuroscientist to talk about how the education system with all the grades have gone down and the mental health crisis has gone up. That's why they're taking it out of schools. So limit has to have a concrete definition. So let me wax spiritual on you. For us as believers, the scripture says, come out from them and be separate, says the Lord. Touch no unclean thing. And if you do that, everybody say if, you'll be received. Now what if you don't? Holiness matters. Okay? Without holiness, you will not see God. That's a verse. It's just not popular, but it's still true. So let me give you an example. You've detoxed, your brain is reset, and we'll talk about how to detox and how to plan it in a few minutes. But let's just say, for the sake of argument, I grabbed anybody's phone. It would look similar to this, not identical, but it would be similar. You'd find a bunch of entertainment stuff on there mixed with some fairly useful things. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
So if I were to apply separation or a detox to the phone, those items on the left are what are predominantly causing all those horrific brain scans. And people ask me for help all the time, but no one has ever come up to me and said, Brad, I'm so addicted to Microsoft Word, I need help. Do you see why I have a laptop sitting in front of me? Yes. Nobody's ever come up to me and said, I'm so addicted to your presentation, could you just send it to me? Most people want to get out of here. So there's a way to use it. So what you do is you clean house. Now, I got to be honest with you. There was a study done, there's been many studies, I'm just going to cite one, of the tech sector in, I think it was Mumbai, India. You know, they're very good at technology over there, just like our boys and girls are in Silicon Valley. So they did a study on their emotional well-being and mental well-being, and they found, as they do everywhere, now these engineers, these software engineers, people using CAD, all these screen time, there, you know, lots of screen time in the tech sector, 11 and a half hours a day is what they average. They weren't doing anything during the day anyway, gambling, porn, none of that, gaming, nothing. They were just doing tech stuff. They have the exact same rates of suicidal ideation, depression, anxiety as people who play video games. It's not the content that's doing it, it's the medium. People have a hard time getting around that Peppa Pig is not harmless. Or the Bible app. It's not harmless. Now, it's harmless if it's a Bible with paper.
Yes.
Are you with me?
Yes.
Okay, hang on just a second. So, let me finish this and I'll come right back to you, okay? So, you got to substitute. So, you detox, the brain returns to homeostasis, and what do you substitute? Analog. And you can put a lot more than on the left side than I'm putting on here, but you know, there's peace of mind that will come. But how about worship? How about, look, that's a picture of the Shenandoah National Park. We're right here. Yes. Go. Yes. The Bible, and then books that are positive, and people. Yeah. And then there is a place with an actual definition of limit. No kid has ever come to me and said, I'm so addicted to Google Classroom. But I will say, we found out that the kids were using Google Classroom for sexting. Because the parents would check there, they assumed it was safe. Then a bunch of kids are in there with their webcams having sex with each other virtually. So it's never-ending cat and mouse game with this nonsense. But generally speaking, kids who don't use it for that don't go to Google Classroom on their own. They have to be made to. So they don't get addicted to it. But it's still not a very good educational model, but it does help. All right. So let's talk about thinking correctly about this. I've given you the science in the last one. Was it helpful to understand the addictive process and how dopamine works? It's not the content, etc. What I have done is aggregated or put together all of the pushback statements and the excuses that people have given me over the years, and I have interpreted them based on neuroscience and, more importantly, a biblical worldview. Okay, so these are the excuses. And the reason I'm doing this is because I cannot solve everybody's problem that is unique. I have to speak in generalities when it comes to addiction. But every one of us, there's broken homes. Beth and I come from broken homes. There's dynamics where the grandparents now, about 70% are raising their grandkids at some level. So there's all these things that you can't solve. But if you understand how to think properly, generally speaking, that will apply to any situation. Are you with me? Yes. So this is Dr. Howard Hendricks sort of aggregated a bunch of awesome scriptures. And this is generally what they say. If you're not thinking correctly, you're not living correctly. What you believe will determine how you behave. Okay? So we want to think correctly about this. So people will say to me, I'm not as bad as I used to be in the context of their digital usage. So they're telling me I've toned it down some. Translation, I don't snort as much cocaine as I used to. So I'm really holy now. Okay? I only allow my child screen time on Saturday if he has been good. The translation, if my child behaves during the week, I will allow him 2 lines of cocaine on Saturday. Do you see how I'm trying to help you here? Is to think correctly about this. I don't know why as a minister people have this impulse to confess their sins to me. I'm not a priest. But I deleted Facebook from my phone. Translation, but I kept Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok, and other stuff that's none of your business. Because I will say, well, let me see your phone there, bucko. And the kids, most of them will just hand it to me. But the adults, you feral mongrel. All right. I only allow my child to play education video games and use education apps. Translation, my child is a genius. He can snort cocaine and do his math at the same time. There's truth in it, though. I limit my child's screen time. Translation, I limit the amount of cocaine and heroin that my child consumes. I give it to them, but I'm a good parent. I limit it. Okay? That's why I keep saying don't stop using words like limit and balance. It doesn't work when it comes to drugs. Sure, I stay up late gaming with my son, but it's our time to bond. Translation, I'm a cool dad. I stay up late doing lines with my 10-year-old. Is that helpful? Wow. So these are the things that I hear trying to justify. It's just traditional addiction things that people say. And then somebody's got to love them enough to explain what they're actually saying. Because if we don't think correctly, we're not going to live correctly. Still love me? Yes. All right, your question. Thanks for your patience.
From the stance of science, is there a difference in the median of old school tech? So like old school video games that aren't as fast flashing, old school cartoons that aren't as fast flashing. So this has always been a problem since the beginning of television? My
professional opinion is what has happened is that the reason why it's gotten worse is because the video game technology, the video cards, the technology has gotten more powerful and faster.
It's like being in a nightclub.
Right. So while it took a little bit longer to get addicted on Super Mario Brothers back in my day, you still got there. You still dreamt about it. So you have this thing called the Tetris effect, which is an old game. But people were going to see the doctor because at night they couldn't get the images out of their head when they slept. So all that burn-in happened with very slow games, very slow technology. My theory is, and again, I have no data for this, the reason why we're seeing a crisis now is because technology continues to evolve exponentially. So that's what I think, but I can't show you a research paper on that. All right, some practical suggestions. I covered some of this last night, so I'm going to go through it pretty quickly, and I'll get into some new stuff. Research shows that you learn more when you read from paper instead of a screen. And the brain scan on the left, that color is the normal amount of activity that a human brain can handle. The person and they're reading from paper, and the person on the right is doing just searches on the internet. That's it. And the brain is on way overload. Do you see that? Okay. Did I see a hand in the back? Yes, Pastor. Hold on, there's a microphone coming because it's being recorded. Don't resist the microphone, Joel.
So we were talking on the break about the difference between, reading physical paper and then an audio book.
Right.
Can you make the clarification on listening to a podcast, non-video, audio only, versus the YouTube version of it and the research that you know about today?
So I used to tell people, and I still do, generally speaking, it was thought that audio was less stimulating because think of a video game. The brain has to go, this is true, it's two-way. So you're interacting with it. Smart TV, if you got a remote and you're interacting with it, it's two ways, so it's very stressful. Audio typically is one way. And I've come across, and I've told people, choose audio over video as much as you can. And it's probably generally true. And then as to this precious lady's point, we're finding now, and there's research, podcasts are extremely addictive. And in some cases, the research shows audio can be, I said can be, not always, can be more addictive for some people than video. So now I'm in a real quagmire because I've already told all these people choose audio or video. And while I still think it's generally true, it's not true for everybody. And I may have inadvertently had people get addicted This is horrible, what I do. So that's the quagmire. So the answer is, and I'm a terrible expert, it depends. And that's all I've got for you. So what I would say, and I said this to Joel, when I say limit, it has to have a definition, right? If you listen to a 45-minute sermon, audio in one go, and then that's it for that day, because I know the adrenal, from another research, the adrenal system in 1 hour gets on overload. And that's where the problems, for an adult. With a child, it's instant, okay? So if you don't push the 1 hour limit, if your brain is healthy, not addicted, my brain's not healthy either, but if it's not addicted, and mine's not, don't push the hour limit, stick with 45 minutes, and I can confidently tell you you're safe. But those podcasts are extremely addictive, so discipline, discipline, discipline. That's my advice, and I hope I'm not wrong. Is it okay that I'm just being brutally honest with you? Because I like to be data-driven as much as I possibly can. Yes?
What are your thoughts on, like, FaceTime? So when, like, family members from far away or whatever want to FaceTime with young kids, like, what are your thoughts on that?
I would say, in that case, I would never deprive a child from having a conversation with grandma, but I would hold it, their attention span's already short, so I'd hold it to a couple minutes and then make them go outside and eat dirt. So their immune system is built up. No, I mean analog. Just being humorous, but that's what I would do. Yes, ma'am. Hold on, microphone. Yes, stick to a question. Go right to the question.
Okay. I listened to Julie.
No, the question.
Oh, the question.
Just go straight to the question. Thank you. I love you.
Okay. Is it okay to spend, say, an hour listening to a spiritual video, like, say, Julie Green? She's a prophet. Or I have a suggestion, though, that maybe...
No, just let me just stop there and let me answer that.
Okay.
It's the same answer that I just gave to Pastor Joel. The adrenals, according to Dr. Archibald Hart, if you want to know where I'm getting this, author of the book Thrilled to Death, How the Endless Pursuit of Pleasure Leaves Us Numb. It's a book about anhedonia. It's a researcher, psychologist. An adult whose brain is not addicted has 1 hour of resilience with a screen, and then it goes sideways just like a kid. So what I told Pastor Joel is limit it to 1 day, 45 minutes, and don't push the 1 hour boundary, and in my professional opinion, you'll be okay. So you're not going to be protected because it's a prophet or prophetess, and then also make sure that their prophecies come true. Otherwise, they're heretics.
Yeah,
all right, let me change gears, okay? So I want to, the problem for most of us actually starts with multitasking. So ladies, can you multitask better than the men? No. You've already heard this last night. There's no human brain. What's funny, I'll ask that in high schools, in auditoriums, and these mongrels, I'll go, no human brain can multitask, and I'm going to give you a test. And they'll go, what'd you do that for? They're going to try to defeat me, right? So here's the test. I want to give you a test. I want to ask you to multitask. And I'm not going to ask you to do 5 or 6 things that you normally try to juggle. Just 2 things. What I'm going to do is put a written poem on the screen, and I want you to read it. It's not long, and it's easy. At the same time, I'm going to play a second and different poem being read audibly, and I want you to listen at the same time you're reading. And then I'm going to give you a cognitive test to see how, by definition, multitasking means. It's the belief that people's brain can receive 2 or more streams of data simultaneous and cognitively retain that information. And people swear they can do it. And it's been taught in schools that it's in curriculum. In order for our children to be successful at their jobs later, we have to teach them how to be effective multitaskers. And the business world used to put that in job descriptions. The business world lost truckloads of money doing that, so they fixed it for the most part. The schools haven't caught up yet. So what I'm going to do is give you this poetry test and then the test. So everybody ready to participate?
We're ready.
All right, don't look at me, look at the screen. All right, you ready? Here we go.
The moon seems very lovely each night it passes by, so beautiful and shiny upon the velvet sky. And yet the moon is really dead, its light is not its own. Though shiny it may seem, it's really just a stone.
Okay, how many of you participated? Raise your hand. How many of you got about 2 seconds into it and said, this ain't going to happen? Raise your hand if that's what happened. So how many of you, after about a second and a half, you thought, oh, forget it, I'll just pick one and do the best I can on this stupid test? How many of you did that? All right, who picked the written one? That's because you're lazy. All right, here's the test. I don't want you to quote both poems and none of that. I want to know who can, word for word, tell me exactly, word for word, what the first line of each one was. You know why everybody fails it? It's because your brain, the moment you try to do that, gets on overload, it gets stressed, and then it defaults to monotasking. Nothing gets in. And this is what's happened in schools with tech. It's what's happened in relationships. It's what's it's happened everywhere. Are you with me? No long-form, deep thinking, monotasking it's called. Now, I'm going somewhere to help you with this. So here's a typical study session or in the office. So with a student, it would be math, English, and history. In the office, it would be report to the boss, the CAD, the Excel spreadsheet. But then in between, notice what's there. There's social media and there's video games. So typically, what happens, a kid sits down to do the math, or in the office, you're sitting down to do the report for the boss, and the dopamine levels drop to the normal levels. But if you got a wall in your brain, do you remember the wall? Your brain starts to withdraw, and you have anxiety, and so it tells you, go check something. And depending on how tall your wall is will determine how long you're gone before you come back. So we don't call it multitasking in my world. We call it what it actually is. It's called switch tasking because you're switching tasks. You're not multitasking because you can't. And it appears to me that the younger you are, the more rapidly you can do it, given the illusion that you're actually multitasking. But nothing's getting in, so it's just called toggling, T-O-G-G-L-I-N-G. And so the brain then says, well, just go get to the next level and then come back. And this is how people work in the office, how students study, and it takes them forever to get their homework done. And they'll tell you they're doing their homework, but the vast majority of the time, they're not. And in the office, we found out, I actually got some people fired one time. I didn't fire them. I just asked a company for 7 days, run logs for me. I don't want to know names. They kept the names. But I want to know what they're doing so I can quantify and break down what they're doing. Well, they were looking at porn, they were gambling, shopping, so they fired some of them. And two times that happened when I asked companies, would you run logs for me so I just want the statistics, what they're doing while you're paying them to make widgets. I want to know when they're stealing from you. Well, when they ran it, they were shocked. So people got fired over it. Oops. I'm glad they didn't know I'd asked the company to do that. Yeah. But do you see the quagmire that we're in? So they're doing this stuff at work. All right, so here's the fix. Here's the rehab. You detox the brain. You get unaddicted to this switch tasking, or what you would call multitasking. And now you train your brain. This is mitigation for you. You monotask. So I reordered things. Kid sits down to do their math, and the first thing that you have to do in the home, in the classroom, and in the office is prepare the atmosphere for productivity and learning. Okay? Total silence. No interruptions. So let's say you're in your office, and you just sat down to study for a sermon, and the Holy Spirit's starting to give you inspiration, starting to, you're an engineer, and all of a sudden, the bridge that you got to do the design for starting to come together, and you're thinking, okay. And all of a sudden, somebody opens the door, pops their head in, makes a comment, and leaves. It takes the human brain 23 minutes to refocus. And we average interruptions every few minutes. The productivity has gone down significantly, and so has money. So has concentration. The reason why I have done my doctorate and my master's degree, when I finish, I should be finished, I think, in June. It will be 2 months shy of 3 years. And I may extend it a little bit, but normally doing those degrees would take 7. And the reason why I've done it is not because I'm overly smart. It's because I have no interruptions in my life. They're all controlled. Now, people still die. Things happen like that. But it's only the extreme things that I get interrupted with. These mundane things that appear this big in most people's head don't appear that big to me. They don't even appear. And I have just studied because I don't like school and I wanted to get it over with. Dead serious about that. But my grades are great. And it's because I've just concentrated all day. And nobody's poked their head in. But then at the end of the day, I've replied to you. I've replied to everybody. It's a matter of integrity. May not be as quickly as they would like. Am I helping you here? Yes. So my seller, I made all this stuff. I used to own a multimedia production company. And I have a computer science degree. I worked in radio and TV. So I know how to do all this stuff. But it sits idle most of the year because I'm gone. But I own it. It serves me. I do not serve it. Does that help? Yes. Okay. The next thing means no music. So in big auditoriums, there will be 500 kids out there, and I'll say, how many of you listen to music whilst you study? Every hand goes up. And then I'll say, that's got to go. And they immediately rebel on me. Immediately rebel. I'll concentrate better. And I'll say, well, let me correct you. What you should say is, I can't concentrate without it, and there's a difference. It's addiction talking to you. That's the problem, because music is extremely addictive. Which means no phone in your presence, because that's how you're listening to your music. And then no entertainment tabs if it has to be online. And that came from COVID. We lost 2 years of education during COVID globally. Did you know that? Yes, we did. So they'd have the tab open of Zoom or Google Classroom, whatever platform or school said, but then they had TikTok, they had Roblox, Discord, all this stuff open, and that's where they spent 2 years. Because parents sat them in front and walked away. With a prefrontal cortex with no brakes, they're never going to do the homework. They're going to go for the dopamine. And that's exactly what they did. And now we're paying a steep price for that. And we are in a mental health crisis because of what the screen, all this stuff I've been blabbing on about, what the screen does to them. All right, so under these conditions, you sit down and you monotask, and that's all you do is your math or your report for the boss. And you just forbid any interruptions for periods of time. And you schedule meetings, and you schedule when you need to meet with people. Now, if somebody dies, give the secretary permission to bolt through the door. You got a funeral now. I get it. History, English. Now, look at what I'm about to say. But look, no more of those. No more video games. These apps in particular, and there's others I could list, the Discord, all those things. I've kept Facebook. I use it, the Messenger, more than anything because free is in my budget, especially when I'm in another country and I don't, it's free, it's just in my budget. I post and beg for prayer when I'm in third world countries because I showed you the video last night. When I'm home, I don't even think about it. But I'm not anti everything, but I am anti those. Okay, and others. No games whatsoever. Just get rid of them. Is this helpful so far? Yes. So monotasking. What time is lunch, Pastor? 11:45. Okay. I'm standing in front of fourth graders here. And I had just asked them, how many of you, your parents allow you to have internet-connected devices in your bedroom overnight? Everywhere I go starting in the third grade, that's how many hands go up. So on this particular night, about 500 of their parents showed up at the parent meeting. So I spoke to the school during the day, parent meeting at night. 500 parents sitting out there, and I went, okay, hey parents, how many of you allow your children to have internet-connected devices in their bedroom overnight? I counted 7 hands. And I said, funny that. Let us look at how your children answered that question at school this morning. So I said, so let's try this again with no lying this time. And sheepishly, all the hands started going up. I said, now we can get somewhere because you finally told the truth. So this is where the 764 comes in, the grooming, the brain damage, the holes. This is why. Because they think their kid is the exception. Then they end up with brain damage, or somebody's trying to coax them into a chat room by themselves. They've sent them nudies of themselves. I won't even use the terminology we use outside of church, but it's awful. So remove all technology from bedrooms, including yours. You have to set the example. You cannot say, do as I say, not as I do. Right. Okay, you have to lead the... This is going to sound weird, but when you go to your bedroom, go to sleep. Yes. So, between the ages of about 0 and 8, the brain, the development of the brain is unbelievable. So between 0 and 3, the brain triples in size. But the brain, just like the reading, it wants slow. Really, really slow. So then from about 3 and up, the creative side, brain goes modular, all these things, just very crucial time that you cannot overstimulate the brain. So the way creativity is formed in a child is through boredom. Boredom is the gateway to brain growth for creativity. So you put the kid outside with no instructions but no screens, and the brain will instantly try to overcome the boredom with nothing to do, and all of a sudden neuroplasticity and neurogenesis, which is brain growth and brain wiring, kicks in and the brain grows, and they start to figure things out on their own, and they develop common sense. You got to let them break a bone every now and again, stub their toe, but it's the only way they're going to figure out, better not do that again. I'm not saying put them in a situation where they kill themselves, but you can't overprotect them because that's how they learn to be safe. You can't just tell them to be safe because they're stupid. We all were. But then they'll start building things. No instruction. Well, we all know as Christians where this is coming from, right? It's God. But even the secular heathen children, they start to get creative. If you put a screen in front of them, even a little bit on Saturday, all that just stops. And they won't figure out things. Anybody ever had some kid at a cash register try to make change and they get all confused and have to get the boss to figure it out? So this teacher comes up to me, a millennial teacher, while I had this up on the screen at a school, and he looked down at me because I'm short. I'm so short my feet showed up on my passport photo. He said, well, if I do that, how am I going to wake up? And I looked up at this Nephilim, just seeing who reads the Bible. It's Genesis chapter 6, the giants of the land. But I looked up at him and I said, why don't you go to Walmart and buy a cheap alarm clock? And he went, oh, yeah. He's raised on technology, I suspect. And I get that question a fair bit. So because of people like him, I had to add this. Go get an alarm clock. The next thing that I would say to you, and this is where people panic, no notifications on your phone or your watch. I haven't had notifications on. In other words, don't live connected. Never live connected. It will rot your brain. It will make your life miserable. The cortisol levels, do you know what cortisol is? It's a stress hormone. Will be so high in your body you will have brain fog all day. Sound familiar? You will be physically tired, yet you haven't done anything physical, and you're extremely irritable by mid-morning. It's the beeps, the notifications, the vibrations. And if your phone goes off in here, you're going to have that 23-minute effect on everybody else. And the IQ in that moment drops several points in everybody because they're irritated. So I haven't had any notifications on my phone. So what do? I use the favorites list. And what that does, by going into your contact list and hitting that little star, only these numbers will ring my phone. And at present, there's only 2 people in there. My mom, who's in heaven, so if it rings, I'm taking that one, pal. Hey, how is it up there? And Beth, my wife. She has a right to get me 24/7. But other than that, I block work, meaning there's a set time that I'm monotask, replying to the emails, then the text, and it goes 40% faster when you work that way. But your brain will tell you that you're being more productive if you switch quick and take care of it right now. And it's all a lie. This is study. These are numerous studies with the highest IQ people in our country who swore that they could multitask at Stanford, and they couldn't. Nobody can. Is this helpful to you? What I'm doing is giving you permission to shut all notifications off and respond, but differently now, and it's timed. Cognitively, your brain will just calm down. Like if we had an EEG on you, you'd be like this. If you turn notifications off, you're like this. So how do you want to live? Now, you're going to have blips because you live on Earth. Right. Earth would be great for the people. Right. I'm kidding. Is this helpful? Yes, ma'am.
I worked remotely prior to COVID, but I noticed that post-COVID, when everybody wanted to work from home and everybody wanted to, come in and leave and go when they wanted and whatever, productivity has gone
way down
significantly.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So would you say it's more productive when that chunking is, I'm going into the office this time to this time, and I'm not?
The tech people have required their people to come. Elon Musk started. He's got an IQ 150. He knows this is a joke. And then a bunch of people quit. Good. Those are the people you look. It sounds harsh, but get rid of those people and replace them with people who will come into work. Your company will, everybody's better off. They make money, he makes, So the work at home thing, it requires extreme discipline to do it. I do because that's where my office is. We're a nonprofit. But can you tell I'm pretty motivated? It works for me, but I haven't seen it work for too many people. And when I first started working at home, it was a big problem because I had all this what I thought was freedom, and it ended up being bondage because I was behind on everything. But my nature is I work hard. And, yeah.
Would you say it's even detrimental, like, personally, when you work from, like, I noticed with myself prior to being married, prior to having kids,
right.
When I worked from home, I would start at 8 a.m. and sometimes I wouldn't shut off till 8 p.m.
Correct.
Like, for me it was, but then I was stopping doing laundry, stopping making
right.
food.
So your productivity with all of those goes down. But there's also the lonely factor that we've had during COVID. We've become the loneliest generation. It was lonely before, but then it accelerated. Because the brain does not respond with endorphins and dopaminergically and serotonin and all those things that make us feel good. It responds very differently when we're face-to-face versus when we're on a screen. Now, I'm thankful that, I could Zoom with somebody at home while I'm in some foreign country somewhere. But it's much better to get a hug from them and sit down over a cup of coffee and sit there and just chew the fat. And we all intuitively know, but the science bears that out. So we're the loneliest generation ever. And that the companion bot stuff that I started talking about, which I'll cover in the next one, which is it's the biggest problem in AI right now. It's not the robots killing the planet and all that, everybody on the planet. It's the companion bots. We're at the next level of trying to fill a void of loneliness with something that clearly is not working. And now people are killing themselves at even higher rates. So we'll get into that in a few minutes. So it's a good question. Anybody else? You finding this helpful? So we rehab, meaning we have a detox. So now let's talk about how to go about a detox. Okay? The first thing that you don't do after hearing this is go home and rip all the technology out and start World War III. Now, you got to rip the technology out, but you can't start World War III. So here's what you do. my premise on all this, anybody love the book of Acts? Somebody help me out now. Come on. We're Spirit-filled people. This is where we get the day of Pentecost from. But what does it say? They were very communal because of all the pressure that they had from the Romans persecuting them. So they lived together. They had all things in common. And they continued on in the apostles' doctrine, and they broke bread in the same room, and that's called koinonia. So by continuing on in the apostles' doctrine, I would go so far as to say they were all on the same page morally, which means they were raising their kids very similarly. They weren't fragmented like we are now. So we come to church, we all leave, and then our kids are under a Christian roof, but they're tethered to all these alleged friends by the thousands outside of the home, and they're influencing them far more than their parents are. That wasn't the case in the book of Acts. Their social network was the body of Christ. And that's where they limited their social network to. That we do know. And what I'm trying to say to you is, that's what we must do, is obey that. Model our homes after that. But then people will say, well, that's just not how the world works. And then I say, be a Christian instead of saying that. Did you hear what I just said? Be a follower of Jesus instead of buying into that. But we, in fairness to people who go to church, we have so woven the world's way into our lives that it's hard to fathom being biblical. In some areas, yes, when we're standing on the promises for our finances, it's easy. And we should stand on the promise for our finances. But when it comes to our family and the social dynamic that God requires, we've changed, and now somebody like me comes in, and you think I'm a cult leader because I'm saying decouple and stop being worldly. But if we're all on the same page, and you're all in agreement after the seminar, how are you going to handle technology, then when your kid goes over to this house to play, they don't come back and say, well, they're allowed to have technology, why aren't we? The norm is they're going to be climbing trees, playing board games, card games, but no video games. You don't have to worry about the porn issue because we just don't have screens like that. Do you know what I'm saying? So it's out of the book of Acts where they did koinonia, they broke bread together. So you limit your child's friend pool to in here. And then y'all have come to Jesus meetings to figure out how you're going to raise kids. Not that you're in each other's business. That's not what I'm saying. I'm talking about on what's going to go on morally so that your kids can have a relationship with each other and there's consistency in how they're being raised on these big issues like tech. Are you with me? Yes. So they don't have a social network online. That's why Australia has banned it. And these are secular people. They got more sense than we do sometimes, I think. And it's because we care about them. But we want them to have face-to-face interaction with kids, not online, so that they're healthy and the mental health crisis goes away. And then they're solving life's problems because they have respect for adults, and we're sitting down speaking into their lives when they have a boo-boo, instead of it being a big crisis. They're also not looking at the hot bodies on Instagram and then having an eating disorder because they're fat. Now look, I'm using terms that are rude, but that's how they think. They're skinny, I'm fat, I want to be skinny. Next thing you know, they're binging and purging, and they're doing all this worldly stuff, trying to show some skin to get the reaction from the boys. I see it everywhere we go. I was just out in San Diego at a big Christian youth conference where I keynoted, and God bless this lady stood up and said all this stuff blunt to the girls. Cover yourself up, you're making the boys lust. And she just said it. And I was so thankful. It's holiness, you know. So that's what I would say. So you plan it and you figure out, okay, when can I do this detox? Well, probably for most people it's going to be during a holiday or vacation. Because the kids aren't in school. You've got time off of work because the whole family has to do it. You got to be practical about this. And until you get to those dates that you clearly mark on your calendar when we're going to do it, you start weaning. Now, weaning technically doesn't work with digital addiction like it would with alcohol or other drugs, But what you're doing is preparing yourself mentally and starting to figure out, okay, how can I reroute this? How can I overcome this? Do I really need this? It's an opportunity to get in a laboratory to go, oops, I never thought of that. To where if you go cold turkey the first day, it's going to be so much of a jolt, you'll probably just quit. But then there's going to come a day when you're going on the vacation, this is it, boom. We're going to do this. And then, before you do it, as parents, you have 2 apologies at least you need to make to your kids. The first apology is look, I'm a drug pusher in a sense. I didn't mean to be. I'm not a perfect parent, but I'm trying to be. I have bought you all this stuff. I am responsible for the shape that this family's in. And I'm very sorry for that. I didn't mean to. God's not mad at me. I'm a bit frustrated with me. But because I'm your parent and not your friend, let me say that again. Because I'm your parent and not your friend, I have to deal with this. And it's my fault. So I'm going to go easy on you. But the reality is, I have to take it away. From both of us. So the second apology is, I've been a terrible role model because I'm just as addicted as you are. If you don't admit it, they will. They tell me all the time. One day, it almost drove me to tears one day. I was at this school, and this 4th grade sweet little girl come up. I was sitting in a chair talking to a bunch of kids, and she just come right up behind me, whispered in my ear. She goes, my mom tells me she's working, but I see she's really on Facebook. Oh, doesn't that rip at your heartstrings? But you hear it all the time. Her mom thought nothing of it, but to her, it was like that little kid trying to get in her mom's lap, you know? So you plan it, you make those apologies, and when I say plan, you plan your analog activities, and you work that plan, because the first 6, 7 days you're going to be withdrawing. Distract, 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 replace, replace, replace. But then, just like those kids that went off to the summer camp, the color very quickly starts to come back in your brain. You're over the withdrawals, and all of a sudden neuroplasticity, which is brain rewiring, new habits, takes about 21 days, starts to kick in, and all that addiction stuff starts to fade off into the background. What I have been working on is a global curriculum of detox and rehabilitation. I told you about that. And what I have been working on is, what do you replace it with? You remember the biblical worldview rates that I mentioned to you that are 4%? We're, brothers and sisters, aside from the technology, the church is on very dangerous ground of losing its identity, because if the Bible is the foundation, they don't know it. It got passed down to me, then it stopped in the generation after me. I'm not here to judge. So what I've been telling people is this. The primary thing that you throw the video games completely away, Instagram, all that stuff. And you go to church now, and God has placed pastors over us, and that's who you listen to, the sermons, you digest them. On the days you're not in church, I recommend the New Living Translation. Get a new Bible. Get this one, because I know it's accurate to the Hebrew, Greek, and Aramaic, but in modern language. And then get these MP3 files and put them on a non-screen device that plays MP3s of Chuck Smith. He's a Bible teacher. He's passed away now. And the reason why I picked Chuck Smith, and I don't say this in a non-charismatic Pentecostal church, but there's a lot of good teachers out there, but the problem is when they get to the book of Acts and they get to Corinthians, they tell people all that stuff used to be, but it's not now, and I don't believe that. Chuck Smith is on our side. And the fivefold ministry, we've gotten really good with all these apostles and prophets running around. That really hasn't been working out too good lately. But there's a teacher in there too. And there's pastor, evangelist. But the teacher, where they walk you through what Isaiah said, line upon line, precept upon precept. So you start in Genesis with Chuck Smith, and you let him take you all the way through to the book of the Revelation, and then you rinse and repeat. And that's your 45-minute podcast every day with the Bible open. And we've got to start working through somebody who can break. Let me give you an example. Something that just rocked my world when I first discovered a good teacher. It was Chuck Swindoll. was going through a terrible time. Don't even remember what it was, but it was awful. And I remember it came. We were going through the life of Moses, and you remember when Moses was on the backside of the desert tending sheep for his father-in-law Jethro? But it was hot, barren. Now, we think of Moses parting the Red Sea and all this stuff. Where did God have him before he did all that stuff? He had him in a howling, barren wasteland for years, and it was miserable. But this is what rocked my world. Chuck Swindoll pointed out that the Hebrew word for desert means to speak. And I realized I'm in a desert, but God put me here because He wants to speak to me. And brothers and sisters, I'm standing before you now because I finally woke up to some good Bible teaching, and He spoke to me. Now I'm speaking to you. Do you hear what I'm saying? And suddenly, the trial, it was awful, but it was lessened because I realized what was going on because of the Scripture. Because I was diving really deep into the entire life of Moses, going line upon line through Deuteronomy and so forth. So Chuck Smith will take, we've got to have us and our kids, instead of video gaming, instead of being addicted to their friends, their whole world needs to turn around. And it needs to be about Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Matthew, Mark, Luke, John. And it sounds like a cult leader, me saying this, to some people because they're so used to being coupled with the world, and we've got to follow God. That's our deal. And what I just said to you is a positive thing. The anointing's in here right now. Do you sense it? And we can't do it in individual homes. We've got to get together and encourage one another, make these changes and figure things out together, pray over each other. That's why God's given us to each other. Is it good? Yes. All right. A couple questions. I've got a few more things under the rehab section for you. Yes, Pastor Joel. Wait for the microphone. All three of you could have taken that.
Going back a little earlier, where did the myth of music that is, Beethoven and Bach came in, that it's the only good music you can study from? Because that came like a storm, and everybody says, "Oh, classical is good for learning." Where's that coming from?
It's false. And let me introduce to you, if I can find it quickly, there's a neuroscientist who specializes in the neuroscience of music. Okay, so let me give you the data on that. It's a good question.
Some people ask me, what's the best genre of music I should listen to when I want to concentrate? And the answer is none.
Do you hear the style of music they're playing in the background? Yeah. Okay.
There are thousands of studies that show that if you're trying to concentrate and do some work, having music on in the background actually causes you to perform worse than if you...
Thousands of studies over and over. So it's not a one-off study. Thousands of them disputed the whole classical music thing. And all other music for that matter.
You didn't have music. The problem is that we find it more enjoyable with music, so we trick ourselves into thinking we're being more productive and efficient, but we're really not. What you can do, though, is take breaks, say every couple of hours, and listen to your favorite music for 10 or 15 minutes. Immerse yourself in that experience, and when you come back to your work, you'll be entirely refreshed. And there's no best genre, it's just whatever you happen to like.
So music is fine, it's the timing of it. And studies. Go on what's actually, been studied. Yes, ma'am. Microphone. Thank you, Pastor, for running back there. You're very athletic. You look great.
Do you believe that certain music has spirits behind it?
Of course. Yes, I absolutely do. The music that we did this morning had the Holy Spirit behind it. And then merely listen to the lyrics of other stuff and you can clearly find out where spirit that came from. And the word muse itself gives a big clue. It muses your spirit. That's what it means. It's a spiritual experience, and we must be very careful which doors we open and close. Only open it to God's music and close everything else out. I know that sounds, again, like, what are you talking about? Well, who was the minister of music in heaven before he got thrown out? It was Lucifer. says he had tabrets and pipes built within him. He would just open his mouth and praise would come out. So then tried to elevate his throne above God's. God kicked him out and a bunch of the angels, which we now know as fallen angels, and he took his music with him. And but we also have worship music, and what's wrong with listening to that all the time? Woo! Yeah. So no music while sleeping as well. Silence or white noise, which is a fan. So would you like me to explain to you what's going on with the sleep? Okay. This is a sleep monitor that I have, and everybody put your hand on the back of your neck. Okay, you can take it off now. That's your brain stem that controls your sleep. So what it does, it sends out a pulse about every 90 minutes, and it takes us into different phases of sleep. So you see it going from light blue to dark blue, so it looks like this, sine wave. So the light blue is light sleep, and the dark blue is deep and REM stands for rapid eye movement. So the good stuff happens in the dark. And if you total up the dark, and if it equals approximately 40% of your night's sleep, your brain is reset. And if you sleep the proper amount for your age, which in this room is 8 hours, teenagers need 9 1/4. And adolescents need 9 1/2. Babies need a bunch more. But if you total up the dark blue, and it equals about 40%, things have transferred at night properly from the short-term memory to the long-term in straight lines, which is called a schema. Otherwise, if you've studied by doing all that toggling I showed you earlier, it puts the information in your brain scattered brain, and you can't draw a connection between it. And so that's how they study now. That's why they got little bits of information, but they can't draw a coherent line between everything that they've learned. But sleep. So the pink is waking up. So under normal circumstances, I'm a very good sleeper. Can you tell? Because I don't have the notifications on. I don't have all this cortisol going. That used to be trashed until I got all that stuff sorted out. So no music while studying, no music while sleeping. But let me show you another thing about sleep. Teacher for teenagers, they need to be finished with all screen time, even legitimate screen time. And I've already told you what you should just cut out. So some of that's not even an issue. Because what happens is the brain gets on overload with all these stimulating chemicals. And for them, it takes about 3 hours to dissipate before they can go from light to deep. It only takes about an hour for an adult because their brain's more mature. It's not fair to them, but that's just how this works. So this teacher came up to me and said, look, I'm not sleeping very well. And I was at an Apple school. It was a Catholic school, but they were Apple-based. So every kid had an iPad, and the teacher had an iPad, and all the students' assignments that were done at school and at home, when they would come to the school network, it would aggregate it, offload it onto his iPad, and then he would grade the assignments digitally. And I said, well, what are you doing before bed? And he said, well, I'm grading assignments on the iPad. And I think he might have been from the old school that thought, well, if it's educational, it's okay. I said, well, that's your problem. It's the screen. So he showed me his sleep monitor. And if you'll notice, it took him 2.5 hours to get into deep sleep from the time he laid down. So I asked him, what are you doing right before bed? Well, at night, I'm grading these assignments. I said, okay, well, quit and read a book. Print it on paper. And he came back to me the next day elated. He said, look, I was reading on paper an hour before bed, and look, I immediately went into deep sleep. These things can be measured. So when people anecdotally say to me, I feel like I don't care how you feel. Measure it. I mean, our perception and reality is usually very different. There's a big gap between the two. Is this helpful for you? Yes. Okay. And you'll have to make the kids do this. But your problem will be greatly lessened if you just take the devices out of everybody's bedroom and get in there and go to sleep. And Benadryl helps too. Okay, I just wanted to see who got that joke. Yes, Pastor.
Yes, you mentioned white noise.
Right.
I work in a mental health agency, and over the last couple of years, you see these. Everyone wants to have a little noise box.
Right.
Outside the office, and it's supposed to. I guess, I don't know, create the right kind of atmosphere or more quiet, but it just seemed annoying to me, and I'm not understanding the purpose of it. Do you have anything to say about that?
Yes, I've seen studies on white and pink noise. They're very similar. It's a fan noise. Jet engine, that sort of thing. So, in the case of sleep, it puts you into deep sleep quicker and leaves you there longer. But the waves and the thunderstorms and all that, I haven't seen studies, so maybe. I can't say for sure. But there's no studies. There may be studies. I haven't seen any. But the white noise I've looked into in depth, and for sleeping, that is totally legitimate. I have recommended, like, kids will come to me sincerely and say, look, I live in a high traffic area. I got 3 younger siblings, and they're noisy. What do I do? The only thing I can think of transposing from the sleep is, well, put a fan noise on and try to study, but don't put music on. That I do know. I don't really have much data for the study issue with the white noise, but that would be my only guess. But I'm sympathetic when there's traffic going by and 3 screaming siblings and they're banging around. There's just nothing they can do. I got to tell them something, but it's not based in science. Totally. Does that make sense? But the sleep, I can tell you, white noise is good for you.
So then I'm wondering, it seemed like during the middle of the day and the office time, wow, you're supposed to be your most productive time. Now I can see why all the doors are closed, because they're probably in there sleeping.
Power naps, they would call it. But it could be power sleeping too, couldn't it? Yeah, that's good. Anybody else? You finding this helpful? It's a lot to it, a lot to digest, but it works. Okay, I'm going to show you one more clip, and then we will take 2 more. Is that okay? They're brief. Had anybody ever heard of Dr. Jonathan Haidt? In the secular world, he is the big kahuna on what I do. And he's a good guy. He's not saved. He believes in evolution and things like that. But he's the thing that sets him apart. He's very conservative because he's honest. So when the data comes out, he's just honest about what's going on, and he'll say it. Very conservative guy. But he's being interviewed here, so he's making the rounds. But globally, this guy, Dr. Jonathan Haidt, is huge. Have a listen to this.
How do we manage this? How do we deal with the reality of modern technology, which, by the way, seems to me to be only going to accelerate it from here?
That's right. So I have a whole email inbox where I send, every day I get emails from somebody who has an app or a website or something that's going to address the problem. And I don't even read them anymore. I just send them to this inbox, and maybe someday someone will look at them.
Okay, I need to explain. If filtering software and accountability software worked, there would be no need for me to be here with you today. The problem would have been solved. In law enforcement, when I work with them, we call it a roadblock, but it's not a solution. It's always been circumvented easily, and that's what he's saying.